All right, go ahead, Gary.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gary Ramsey, and this is your superior self.
Gary, my man, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to talk to you, buddy.
I am so excited to be here, Trey. Thanks so much.
So your story is so unique. So just to give everybody a little kind of a backstory, I reached out to Anita Morjani and her team to get her on the show because I read her book, Dying to Be Me, I think it is. Yeah. And then her team recommended you. So I followed up on that, followed up on your story, and I was like, yeah, I got to get Gary Ramsey on the show. This dude is legit. His story is very inspiring. Never had an opera singer on here though. That's the first.
First
So
time.
first time opera singer.
First time for everything.
So welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Opera singer. How'd you get into that?
Well, I've got to be honest. It really came off of my work. I was an actor, and then from there I became a teacher, and I got involved in voice and teaching voice, and I was mainly doing it at an acting school. And then from there, I became an Alexander Technique teacher. Are you familiar with that?
No, not at all. This is all first for me.
Alexander Technique, yeah, it's an old method. It's been around for over 150 years. He died in 1955. It's basically, though, about how we utilize ourselves in our daily life and how the relationship that we have inside of our bodies and our minds in relationship to our body is actually kind of creating our reality. So either you're living in your life at ease, or you're living at your life with, with opposition. And he was really teaching about finding ease, balance, and not letting things be so hard. He was very big on efficiency. The more efficient you are, the easier your life is. And it turned out to be a really mind-blowing thing for me. And through that, I discovered my voice as an opera singer, actually very late in life. It was kind of a fluke. And
but you're pretty good at it. I mean, you're really good at it. I listen to some music, like you're pretty decent.
Thank you. And I really only did it because I had met somebody, very famous opera singing teacher, who I really wanted to work with, but the only way I could work with him is if I sang. And he was amazed at my ability to take on his training so easily. And then from him, really, I got all my jobs. I never really wanted to sing opera ever in my life. And then it turned out that I actually loved it, and started doing Europe, started doing here in America. I got into a lot of kind of new cutting edge things in the opera world. Got a big Times review back in 2010. And so I kind of hit on the scene, and that's really how that started, all by accident, really, by accident.
Man, that's amazing. People stumble upon that, right? And but that theory you were talking about before, like the ease of life, like the mindset, the body, the soul, the spirit, all being one and being one with that. And
absolutely,
I am all about that, my friend.
And that was my salvation. I mean, that turned out to really set me up for what was to come.
I cannot wait. So let's go ahead and get into that. So yeah, why don't you go ahead and start? So like you battled cancer.
It wasn't now cancer. See, yes, I had cancer. Although, as I was told by my doctor, that was the least of my problems. Not exactly something you want to hear from your diagnosis.
This is the least of your problems.
Yeah. What he actually said to me, literally, and this is what I told Anita Morjani the first time I met her. She laughed. But he literally looked at me, all my test results were in. I came back. I knew something was off and not well. And he looked at me and said, "You can die at any minute." And I just went, "What?" He goes, "You can die at any minute." I actually thought he was kidding. And I didn't even know what to say. I mean, and he literally just pointed at me and looked at me, and he was dead serious. And I said, how? And he said, well, first of all, you have cancer. And he said, but that's not a problem. I was like,
It's not a
oh,
problem. That
so
is
I have
the worst.
cancer, but that's not a problem. I go, okay. And he goes, what you've got is you've got this huge tumor. He said, and this tumor is traveling up your renal vein and it's going towards your heart. He said, it's called a branching tumor. One of your branches has branched in this wild place. It's absolutely gigantic. And he said, and it's going straight to your heart. If the tiniest piece of that comes off, he said, it's a highly trafficked fluid area. If the tiniest piece comes off, he said, it's going to stop your heart. You're going to be dead within, 8 to 10 minutes. So I said, well, what can be done about it? He said, oh, that's the bad news. And that's when I thought I was going to jump out a window. I was like, that's the bad news. I couldn't even believe he was actually saying it to me. I realized, though, in retrospect, he was really himself in a panic. He was, I think, kind of shocked because, as he said, I was looking really good. I didn't really I had symptoms, but they weren't that serious. But he said, people with your kind of tumor, he said, are usually dead. He said, usually they're already dead. He said, I don't really even understand how or why you're still walking around. He said, but what I can tell you is that this thing can kill you at any second. He said, and there's really not much we can do. It became clear. He told me anything they try, he said, anything they try is going to aggravate this tumor and cause it to, he kept using the word as flake off or rupture, particle rupturing, which would stop the heart. And he said, and to be honest, he said, I just don't see how you'll ever even survive a surgery. He said, the chances of you coming out of a surgery to remove this safely, he said, is almost nil. He said, the best thing I can suggest to you is get your affairs in order as soon as possible.
Yeah, what brought you in? Like, what was going on with you to go to the doctor? This isn't like a regular physical, right? Like,
well, no. What had happened is originally I had always had a problem with stones. So I basically thought this was a kidney stone that was starting to occur. And I did have an incident where I passed some blood with it, which is not uncommon with kidney stones. And I went to the doctor the first time, that was my regular doctor. And he said, everything's checking out. There's no problems here. He said, if I were you, what I would do is if anything happens again, just go to a specialist. Don't even bother coming back here. He said, go to a specialist. I said, fine, but nothing really happened. And then a couple of months went by and I had this weird feeling with my stomach, but it was odd. And I had taken an antibiotic for when they usually give you one when you pass a stone in case you got an infection. And I thought it was something with the antibiotic because I usually don't do really well with those. And then it still wasn't going away. So another health practitioner said, why don't you cut sugar out of your diet? It'll flip your stomach. It was probably the antibiotic. Why don't you try it? And I did. And to be honest, I felt fantastic. I felt really good after like the first, maybe 2.5 weeks. But then I started losing weight, which I expected because I cut the sugar. And then all of a sudden the weight loss seemed to be bizarre. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And then it was one of those things where I thought, didn't I just weigh 3 more pounds yesterday? And then I'm like, no, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the scale's off, maybe this, maybe that. Well, anyway, then it became apparent the weight loss was getting more. And then I passed blood again. And by that point, I had already made another appointment with a specialist. He was a urologist, and which is what I was told to go to. And so I went in there, I did all the tests, and then, we got the test results, and that's when he hit me with, you can die at any minute.
Cancer is the least of your problems.
And cancer is the
7 minutes, you could be dead.
And when he first said it to me, I felt better.
Mm.
I actually felt better for
You
like
knew what was
a
happening.
fleeting moment. I was like, oh, I've got cancer. It's not so bad. And then he says, no, because you're probably going to die and there's nothing we can do. And that's when it really like, then the world became surreal in that 5 minutes. Everything kind of, it's so weird. It felt like everything outside was moving fast, but everything inside was moving slow. And I
And he,
remembered telling him, I said, well, like if I do something about this, what should I do? He said, the only hospital you can go to is Sloan Kettering in New York. They're the only ones who will be able to handle you. Maybe, he said, Hackensack in New Jersey. He said, those would be your only two choices. He said, I wouldn't go until you have all your affairs in order. He said, because I really don't believe you're going to come out. He said, and to be honest, you may never make it there anyway. So do the best you can from now until,
yeah.
And for some reason, I looked at him and I said, well, can I have all my test results?
I don't
And I
believe you.
still don't know why I said that, because it was like, what was I going to do with them? But I just said it. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, I mean, sure, we'll give you a copy, and literally he also wrote down a doctor at Sloan who would maybe be able to help me out. And then I turned and the nurse had all the results all copied and ready. It was like, and then I thought, oh, wow, I think they don't want me to die in the office. I think they want me out of here. So I went, he was really kind. And I got outside and that was the beginning. I got outside and it was like, I went out the door and I felt like, whoa, I can breathe. And I mean, like I really could breathe, like better than I've ever breathed in my life. And I just started walking and I really felt good. And I was walking towards this park. There's a little park by the doctor's office. And I started walking towards it. And it was a beautiful day. The breeze, it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cool. It was perfect, late in August. And all of a sudden I saw all these kids playing in the park and their nannies and their mothers and fathers and people and old people and women and people on walkers. And all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my God, anybody can die at any minute. And the only difference between me and them is I have these papers in my hand that prove to me that it's going to be me. But how do we know any one of these people are going to make it to dinner tonight?
Mm.
And I got to tell you, Trey, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went into a state that I will just always say was like this state of bliss. I felt like I can't even tell you if I shot more into my body or out of my body, but it was like I was, whoa. And I know at some point I sat down because that's how I remembered then that I was already sitting on a bench. And I was so blissed out. It was like I thought of nothing, but just this pure, it was almost kind of like feeling like people when they describe when they die. It's this feeling of just like everything was great. And then what woke me out of that was Anita Moorjani. And she is the first thing that came to my head. And it was like she woke me up. I mean, not that she was really there, but it was her story and her essence that kind of woke me up. And I thought, Anita Moorjani. Now, I don't know, do your viewers, do your people know her story?
Well, they will. We're going to have an interview set up, but yours will release before hers. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can.
So,
Yeah.
just very quickly, Anita was a woman who was dying of end-stage cancer. She was stage 4B lymphoma in a major cancer hospital in Hong Kong. She was on her deathbed. She was only given like 40 minutes or 35 minutes to still live. Her organs were failing, and she had a near-death experience, and she came out of it. And she told them that she was going to be fine, to take everything out of her. And the woman is alive today. And there is no medical reason why she should really be alive. Her book I had read, 3 years before my cancer. And when I read her book, I was so inspired because I'd never read a firsthand account of somebody like that. I've read about people who have had those experiences. There's some famous ones, but they never wrote about it. They never became famous, and she was. And I thought of Anita, and I thought, oh my God, she was dying in a coma. Here she was riddled with cancer. She's alive, so maybe something will happen for me. And that was the first thing that woke me out of that state of bliss. And I shot up and I thought, wow, so I guess then I should do something. And I thought, I wonder what I should do. And I honestly was still blissed out. I couldn't think, like, what should I do? And then I remembered the doctor said, you should tell somebody, because nobody knew except me, him, and the tests. And so he said, and I thought I should call my sister. So that's how it started. I, put a call. I started telling people. And of course, no one would believe me. It was really hard. I realized that just telling somebody that diagnosis was almost next to impossible. It took me longer to explain it than it actually did to accomplish what I needed to do. And then finally, I did make calls. I was going to do an opera in Dallas, Texas, as a matter of fact. I had to call the producers. I canceled that. They were in complete shock. And then as I finally arrived home, and this is a while, this has already took probably about an hour and a half. I put the key in the door and it hit me about Farrah Fawcett. I remembered Farrah Fawcett, and you might say, like, why? Well, when Farrah had her cancer and she was dying, she was very, very sick, they flew her to Germany. And I remembered, I was puzzled by that. And I had asked a friend, and that's what I remembered, a friend. I said, why would they fly a dying woman to Germany? And they said, oh, Germany has some of the top cancer treatments in the world. So all of a sudden it popped to me, why don't I go up and research Germany? Well, like, why don't I just fly up the stairs, and maybe there's something in Germany that they don't have for my tumor. And I thought, but what's the odds of, how am I going to do this? But I didn't care. And I got on and I started going through Germany, and I'm going through these clinics, cancer clinics, and all of a sudden a pop-up comes up on the right side of the screen. And it's this beautiful, it looked like a palace. I actually thought it was a palace. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, if I'm going to die, that's where I want to die. And do you know that place was a medical clinic in Mexico?
Really?
I couldn't believe it. And when I checked it out, I started reading. I thought, oh my God, it's a medical clinic. And then as I started reading, they dealt with cancers. And I'm thinking, oh shit. And then I was getting like, this is unreal. This is just too unreal. So I hurried up, I clicked on it. There was a number. And I thought, well, why not call? I mean, he's telling me nobody can handle me except for Sloan, and they're going to kill me. So what have I got to lose? Call up Mexico. Sounds like a nice place to go anyway. So maybe I'll just go, what the hell? So I call on them up. The woman answers the phone. They have a connection here in the States. And her name was Micah. And I'm explaining to her about, I have this deadly tumor. She goes, yes, we are familiar with those. And I said, what? And she said, we're familiar. I said, well, I was told these are unusual and that they don't happen a lot. And she said, yes, that's true. And I said, well, then why do you know about them? And she said, oh, because a lot of people come here when they have those tumors because we have a better success rate. I said, you're kidding me. And she goes, no. She said, I'm totally aware of those tumors. I said, well, what is it that what is better? She said, well, first of all, we don't see them as deadly, and we don't just operate on them like they do in the States. She said, generally, if you just operate on the tumor, it fractures and the person dies. And I said, well, what do you do? And she said, well, we do a variety of treatments, pre-treatments, to try to stabilize the tumor. So I was like, stabilize the tumor? What's that? She says, well, we try to make it angry. We try to make it upset. And when tumors get upset, they start to kind of contract on themselves, and they get tighter and tougher, and they're not as fragile as your tumor sounds like it is. I said, you're kidding me. And how are you going to do this? And then she explained it's through diet, it's through this, it's through that. That you have a whole team of doctors, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm like, by this point, I'm like, well, I mean, I don't think I have a choice. I was like, I mean, sign me up.
Mhm.
He said, well, you know, but the problem is we need all of your medical records. And I go, I've got them. Like, they're right here. I've got them. She's
Talk
like,
about fate.
oh my God. And she even said to me, she said, oh my God, that was so astute of you. Most people don't take them. I said, I know. I don't know. I didn't know why I asked the doctor, but I asked him for the records. I wanted a copy. And she said, this is going to save a lot of time and da da da. And she said, you're in such a good spirit. And I said, because I'm just on this high. And she was like, well, when did you find out about this? And I said, yeah, like about 2.5 hours ago. And she's like, whoa, you are really in a good place. And I was like, you know, I feel great. She said, well, sir, I'm going to tell you something. That's one of the most important things. When people are in a good mindset, that can produce miracles. And she said, and now that you have those medical records, this is going to save a ton of time. I said, good, because I don't have any. And we laughed so hard.
That's great. That is awesome. And then you, I get, how long did it take for you to get down there? I mean, I'm sure there.
Well, now here is the deal. Once the records go in, then they have to assess. They have a team, and they assigned each person, each patient, a team. They don't actually call you a patient. They call you a guest. They never refer to you as a patient. You're never sick. You're never sick. Even though you're dying, you're never sick. And they assigned, you know, my team, and then the team decides if they feel they can help this person, because they don't want people coming out there and then dying. They want to make sure that they have a good chance. And they said, we feel he has a way better chance here. The application is extensive. They ask about your psyche, your mental, your emotional. I mean, it's huge. And then they take a chance on you. So I found out within 2 days. It was because I was diagnosed on a Tuesday. I heard from them on a Thursday. I was able to get all my affairs in order. I was working the whole time, just thinking like, I'm definitely going to go. I'm sure they're going to take me. They did. And I flew out and was there on a Sunday. So from a Tuesday to a Sunday, I completely closed down my life. And I went to Mexico.
Were you able to stay on that high though from that Tuesday? I mean, after that call with Mexico, were you able to stay on?
Honest, I had this blissful high. Now it would come and go. I started having a lot of people who were becoming hostile towards my decision. I had a lot of people that were threatening me, telling me they would never speak to me again. This was some kind of ripoff. How can you even think of going to Mexico when they told you to go to Sloan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't even, I mean, most of it was like, okay, all right, well, thank you very much. And I was just making my way to Mexico. The only thing is they did say there is a good possibility you can die. Your chances are better here than in the States, but we do need a representative. So we need someone from your family here representing that if you do pass, we have somebody who can sign papers and can get your body out of the country. And I said, I got my sister to do it. She was going to fly down and meet me for the operation. That's all I needed her there for, was the operation. They said, you won't die. There's no way you're going to die before the operation, but you could die during the operation, which I was told I probably would die during the operation. So I was fine with that. And my sister, we arranged it. I got the ticket. I found this astounding deal, because it was a one-way, because I wasn't going to book a round trip. Like, why book a round trip if you're not going to come back? And it was all perfect. I could not believe how well everything fell into place, which is really why I wrote my book, because I realized that when you are in like a superior place, this state of bliss, you are invincible. I mean, I felt absolutely invincible. There wasn't one thing in any problem that arose. Like, for example, they had mentioned that a lot of motion and being in a pressurized cabin could maybe offset the tumor. And the doctors immediately told me what to do, how to eat until I got there, and how to treat myself until I arrived in Mexico. And the tumor was totally fine. Everything was fine. I never had a problem, never got sick. None of it.
Interesting. Like, I mean, yeah, I guess you're like, yeah, well, did you have health insurance?
No, I did not.
Okay, so that was that, I'm assuming that's a major factor in your decision, right?
Well, that was a major factor because, which that happened, and you know how difficult the whole insurance thing is. My insurance many years ago had gone skyrocketing, and I decided many years ago I would make a personal insurance account. So I did have insurance, but it was my insurance. It was me. I mean, that money was mine that I had set aside, and I had never touched it. I'd never touched it the entire time. And then there it was. And I had all my medical stuff I had taken out of that account. And now I could make whatever choices I wanted because it was my money.
Sure. Did you get any like pushback from the states on health, like on treatment because of that? Because you just had cash. Like, did they say anything to you or limit you to any type of? No, they were just like, this is what you got to do, and that's it.
Just had cash. And what people don't know, by the way, is when you have cash here in America, even my diagnosis, when you have cash, you have a lot more power than when you're dealing with an insurance company. So, for example, I had to have a CAT scan when before my cancer, when I had to be diagnosed. CAT scans cost about $9,000. So I called up radiology departments. I said, I don't have insurance. What can you offer me? First one says $2,500. I said, great, I'll let you know. Second one says, I said, I got an offer for $2,500. How much can you do? And they said $1,600. I said, great. The other one said 25. And that one, they said, and if you get anything lower, call us back. So then I knew I was going to get lower.
Oh my God. Look at that.
I know. So then I did. I called the next place, one of the busiest labs in New York City. I called the busiest lab in New York City. And I said, I just got this offer for $1,600. This is what I need. And they said, if I get it lower, to call them back. And she said, don't even go any further. You won't get it any lower. We're offering you $750, come with cash, and we will do that scan for you. So I got a $9,000 scan for $750. And I had
started doing that.
Yeah, I had learned that long ago, because remember, I've been doing this game. I stopped my insurance probably in 1991, I think. 1990 or 91. And then every month I would bank my premium. So it was like I still had insurance. It was just going to me.
It's just you're the insurer, right?
So once I learned this scam, I've done this over and over and over. And see, it's totally legal. Number one, it's like buying a car, because when you're your own agent, you're just pricing. That's all you're doing. And I found out that it's easier on their end because they don't have to process. See, they waste hours in processing. it costs them way more money, which is why they overcharge. So that's really when I learned how to do that. So my whole diagnosis cost me under $1,200, which if I would have had a deductible, it would have cost me $2,500.
Yeah.
But I just paid it outright. And
So
then of course, Mexico, I paid
yeah,
that outright. Yeah.
talk about that Mexico. Like you get down there, like is it the same as the picture, the castle? Like is everything like the same as far
Oh
as
my
what your
God.
expectations were?
It was Paradise Island.
Yeah.
It is Paradise Island. It's called San Aviv, and it's right on the Baja. And the every room, which is, you know, like a spa, really. The rooms are gorgeous, you know, with, I mean, they're huge. Every room has a balcony, and every room for the guests faces the ocean. There is not one room that doesn't face the ocean. You get your private room, and then within your room, you have a guest room in case, like me, I needed my sister to come down. That's her room off of my room, which is a smaller room, but I mean, the room was huge. You know, I had a living room. I had this beautiful terrace, huge double doors. You know, it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And they take care of everything. They dress you, they feed you, all the amenities. In fact, they ask you, please don't bring a lot with you, because they say, we will provide you with everything, toothpaste, all of it, because they don't want anything impure touching you. So their water is purified. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Mhm.
And because I was considered, by the way, I was there, all of us were dying. I was there, every person I was with, they were either terminal or like me, dying. I was considered a high risk, however, because I had this, you know, this thing that could rupture. So, and you know, when you're there with all of these people who are basically in dire circumstances as well, you start really learning a lot. And I started seeing how healing really works. It has a lot to do with mental. It has a lot to do with emotional. It has a lot to do with spiritual. It has a lot to do with also how you're seeing the physical and what they're doing for you, and how you're working with it or working against it. They do offer all kinds of modalities. But with me, they really wanted to stabilize this tumor, and that's what they kept calling it. We're going to stabilize. And they wanted to stabilize it without killing me. And unfortunately, they had to starve it. And to starve it, they were nourishing me with really good stuff, but it was devouring me. So then the real game became, can they keep me healthy enough for the surgery and still weaken the tumor, or actually strengthen the tumor? The tumors get stronger when they have to work harder.
Sure.
But they didn't want it to break apart. So I dropped a lot of weight. I went down to like 136
Jeez.
pounds. I was a little below 4% body fat.
Wow.
And then they went in to do the surgery because they saw a window of opportunity to do it, and it worked.
How long was the surgery?
Did it. And the surgery, they said it was one of the fastest of these kind they'd ever done. It was a little over 3 hours, and they couldn't believe it. They said your tumor came out like a baby. They said, because a baby's not attached, you know, other than the umbilical cord, it's not attached. It comes out. They said yours did the same thing. It just literally just came out, and it didn't rip, nothing tore. They said there was no blood. They said it was a perfect surgery. Perfect surgery.
So the tumor comes out, but you still have cancer.
I still
Right.
had cancer.
So how do you treat that, or how do you rectify that? Like, I mean, you said that they had remedies for that, right?
Well, yes. Now they do chemotherapy, but that's what I was expecting, because they can do Western modality as well. And then when I went into the conference, they took my kidney and the tumor, they shipped it off, and they said they wanted to examine it. And I was like, all right, you know, I didn't care. And then all of a sudden, when I went back in to see the doctor, after I got back up and moving, and I did really well, really quickly, they said, I said, so what are we going to do about the cancer? And they said, we're going to put you on a serum. And I said, a serum? And they said, yeah, we broke down your tumor of your kidney and they're going to make a serum out of it. I said, well, what is the serum? And they said, well, it's things that the tumor was made out of. And what we're going to do is put that into a serum and we're going to re-inject it into your body. And what's going to happen is you're going to become immune to that cancer so that it can never metastasize. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you will be immune to it. Like you won't ever be able to catch that cancer again.
What?
And I was like, what? And they said, yeah. And if there's like a radical thing that's floating around in your body, it won't be able to kill you because you'll be immune. They said, it's just like a vaccine. And I thought, oh my God. And I said, well, what about chemo? And they said, you don't need it. They said, the vaccine will do everything. And I said, well, then what after that? And they said, well, then that's it.
That's done. It. That's fine.
It's gone. And I was like, so what do I, and then of course they put me on diet and certain, herbs to strengthen me because I was so weak from the loss of weight and body fat. But that was it.
Jeez.
I was back at work 6 weeks from the day I took off to Mexico.
And you're back at work in New York.
In New York City.
So you go from 6 minutes, probably going to die in 6 minutes, to 6 weeks back singing opera. Yeah. That is amazing. That is just awesome. And that is just like, I just love how like in that moment of like the worst news of your life that you could possibly get, you could die walking out of the hospital. Mm-hmm. You had this vision of looking at it differently than some people. Like it was like this, like you talk about the bliss, you talk about the higher consciousness feeling, that happiness that Anita talks about in her book, that love, that oneness, right? Like that just, I can't word it other than bliss. Yeah. You chose to use that and energize yourself to the point where like the universe is like throwing you clues, right? Like you got the Anita idea. You're coming into your house and you think about what you said to your friend about Germany, and next thing you know, you're researching Germany, right, for treatments, and then you come across Mexico. And who would have thought? Like me personally, I'm thinking if you go to Mexico for any type of surgery, you're coming back with missing body parts and things on the black market. Like I'm not relating Mexico to being like a cancer location where they're going to cure me. But it sounds like like you said, they have a different viewpoint on the healthcare system down there. Yeah. Like it's not like we're trying to catch up to this thing. We're like trying to like you said, just take a different approach to it, different mindset. That's right.
And that's really what hit me. It was a different perspective. And I thought, oh my God, isn't that like everything? It's you look at something and you can look at it from a different perspective. Is the half of a glass of water half full, half empty, or is it just a half a glass? What is it to you? What is your perspective on it? It's always a half a glass of water. So now what is it? Is it life-saving? Is it life-threatening? Is it disgusting? Is it spectacular? And that's really when I realized that this whole healing game is so much about perspective. And I do realize, like my wonderful diagnosis, you could die at any minute. A lot of people I met, especially from the States when I was in Mexico, were given equally horrible death sentences, basically. I mean, that's what almost all of us there had gotten, death sentences. There was no positive sentence. Mexico was giving you more of an uplifting perspective. And that, yes, you might die. And they didn't say I wasn't going to die, but they showed me where that could be averted if we could manage this tumor in a different way. Whereas the States was basically saying, no, there's nothing we can do. If we touch you, you're gonna die. And that was the mind-blowing part, a
Yeah.
perspective shift. And when you really think about it, let's be real, that's how different countries are. I mean, they have different perspectives on all kinds of things, the way to live, the way to eat. They have different perspectives on food, on all of that, on the economy, on cost of living. It's all a perspective. And that was the most powerful thing really for me. And that's what I now help people with who have cancer. I try to see if I can help them to kind of raise their consciousness a little bit and see it from a broader place. Even if it's a death sentence like mine, it doesn't mean you're really going to die. And if you are going to die, one thing I was adamant about is I was going to make it a great death. I was not going to die a victim. I was not going to die in fear. And I was not going to die having a bad time. That was not going to happen to me. It was like I was going to be in a great place. And so that's my big message to people.
And that's
Don't
so you wrote a
victim.
book though. Your book is called Bliss, and you talk about your story, and you talk about the mindset, you talk about your perspective, and how your body can come back from something like cancer, right? Like, so when you're working with these people that have cancer, what are you helping them? Like you talk about raising their consciousness. Is this like through meditation? Is this through like
Well, it's a variety of things. But first I have to see where they're at. Like first I have to get, why are they contacting me? What are they looking for? Sometimes they're just looking for information. Sometimes they're looking to ask me different things. And I've had all kinds of people. Sometimes it's not the person sick because they're so sick, it's a family member that's contacting me. So sometimes I'm dealing with those people. But first, I try to get a perspective. Okay, where are you at? Why are you contacting me? What is it that you're looking for? Where is everything at? And then we start to go from there into, I ask a lot of questions. And I try to find out, well, how do you feel about your diagnosis? Or what are you thinking about? See, because it's not so much me telling them something, it's more about them discovering what's going on within them. The one thing I did learn, especially because I went to Mexico, like you had mentioned, most of my friends thought I was going to go out, they were going to steal my body parts, they were going to murder me, it was going to be like China, they're going to harvest my organs and then they're going to dump me in the ocean somewhere. And I realized that people who are ill, and I won't even say cancer, just people who are ill, they have a lot of pressure around with the people who love them. And I think the people around them really do love them, but people around them have a tendency to need the person ill to do what they would be doing. They do not take in consideration the person that's actually sick. They take in consideration themselves in relationship to the person who's sick. It became more and more apparent to me. It's really bad when it's husband-wife teams where the husband's thinking one way, the wife is thinking the other way, or vice versa. It's really bad when it's children, parent. The worst, of course, is when you have a child that's ill. The children, because the parent is the only way for the child to survive. Unfortunately, children, there's a lot of laws that restrict parents from what they can and cannot do. People don't know that, but here in the States, you cannot fly your child out of a country when they're sick. That isn't happening. So that's what I do. I counsel them. And then I kind of look at where they are. And then I say, maybe you should think about this, or maybe you should look into this, or maybe I never advise people necessarily to go to Mexico. Because remember, I can tell you while I was out there, there were people, they were too afraid of it and it didn't work. If you're not vibing with the highest part of yourself, it's not going to work. And, I've seen people with hideous chemotherapy treatments that survived beautifully because they believed in them. And they really, really, they had a real connection to that kind of treatment. So that's what I advise, that they're really behind their treatment. They're really behind their doctors, whoever they are. They're really behind what they're doing for themselves, how they're thinking, how they're living. And that's really the direction I send people, always.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the people that are ill, right? A lot. I mean, maybe not the kids. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think like the people we bring it on ourselves, right? Because a lot of the stress we live every day, the mentality that we have, that that negativity, that just guck that gets on our souls during the week when we just continuously think about we're not good enough, like we hate on ourselves, we constantly compare ourselves to other people, like all that tension, all that stress releases chemicals in our body that we aren't aware of, right? Like if you do that over a long term, like it does big damage to your body and eventually could lead to some illnesses. But on the flip side, I 100% believe in epigenetics, and that we can, with our positivity and our mindsets and the way that we, along with what we put in our bodies as far as food and nutrition and living a healthy lifestyle and building our immune systems, like we can totally, with a positive mindset, like change a lot of the illnesses that we have, right? Absolutely. With the help of holistic medication, or not medication, but medical care. I think that we can, like you said, right? Like you have said this before, where we are the masters of our bodies, like the inside of it. Like we know ourselves more so than that doctor who was diagnosing you, right? Like he is taking images of your body and basically comparing it to everything that he has experienced, or a database that the hospital has of other patients. It's not necessarily you.
Right. Right.
I'm a big believer in that, man. Like I just feel like, I've been reading a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And
I love Joe Dispenza.
Joe Dispenza is the man when it comes to like meditation and bringing that warm feeling, that heart, that powerness, that inner being that you are, bringing it forth inside of yourself, feeling that.
Sure.
Becoming one with the higher consciousness of the universe. Like people are like, what are you talking about? That's woohoo. It's like, but the data that he presents in all of his books supports some of the claims that he makes, like some of the people that he talks about, and he'll come out and tell you, he's like, I don't care what people think of me. I've been having these retreats for years, and I'm collecting all this data on people that have been sick or ill, and they're curing themselves with the practices that they're doing, meditations. Right.
And again, we're talking about the mind and the relationship with the mind and the body. And as I said earlier, I think that's where that Alexander work helped me tremendously, because I already had a really good relationship going on. And then we got this hideous little cancer that developed. And they even told me why I actually got into trouble with that kidney, which I also found really funny, because after the surgery and they broke down my kidney, they said, wow, you were in a really bad car accident. And I went, what? And they said, you must have been in a really bad car accident. I said, no, I've never been in a car accident. They said, well, you had impact on the right side of your body. You had trauma. I said, why are you saying that? And they said, it's on the kidney. When we broke down your kidney was traumatized in an accident, and you had severe impact. And when they said that, I was like, holy shit. When I was about 21 years old, I was crushed in a moving truck. It was a summer theater I was doing, and wood fell on top of me. And I was trapped under thousands of pounds of wood for like over a 45-minute period before they could get me out. And I was crushed on my right side.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my God. And then I said, that accident could cause cancer? And they said, well, no. They said, but what it did was it traumatized the kidney, and your kidney never actually recovered from that accident. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is it's a weak organ, and weak organs are open to cancer. They said, so, and they said, you were only like 20 years old, and, I was 57 when I got the cancer. So they said, 37 years, they said, to be honest, that kidney did really well, but it finally gave out. And of course, it got this cancer. And they said, your cancer had probably, the tumor was so massive, they said, your cancer's probably been there for quite a while. They said, it's probably been going on for years, but it never caused you a problem. So you didn't know. And then they told me a lot of people die with cancer in them, but it never causes an obstruction or a problem. People think cancer makes you ill. It doesn't. They said the body knows how to reroute and how to maintain and even how to isolate cancers. They said yours was very well isolated in your body. They said, so it's really not as deadly as people think, but we have this consciousness where we believe, oh my God, cancer, the big C. And that they said, and that's part of the problem because the person's psyche already feels like it's victimized. It already feels like it's done for before you've even started treatment.
Yeah. What was your mindset, like that positive, like glass half full mindset before the cancer, or did it change after they diagnosed you?
Well, I'll tell you, I had a lot of experience in my life, and I'm the type of person who's much more on the positive side of things, and I don't get too freaked out by stuff. When I got the diagnosis, and when here in the States, I was pretty convinced that I would die, but I was so blissed out, I didn't care. It didn't affect me in the same way. And I thought, wow, my life has been great. So I'm not gonna, I'm 57 years old. If this is how it ends, it ends, which made me feel even more calm. There was no fighting. See, again, a lot of people get into a fight mentality. And as we all know, when you fight something, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of energy to fight something. So I didn't. I surrendered more to it. I found that the more that I surrendered to the disease and the dying, my body was able then to really be calmer. And I was able then to really take in the treatments more fully. And then I started catching on to it. And people would keep saying, that's the attitude you need. All in Mexico, they'd say, that's what you need to do. And I noticed that a lot of patients there, the ones that were doing the worst were the ones who were freaking out. Those were the ones who were actually doing badly. And they would tell me all the time, Gary, just keep up that attitude. Keep it going. Keep it going. And that's when I really realized, wow, this really is a lot about the person's psyche. But I will say, all the people that I was surrounded by in the States, including the doctors, were hysterical. Even my friends, everybody here in the States. When I got to Mexico, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, thank God, I now can either heal or I'm going to die at peace. I don't care which it is, but I am not going to be a raving maniac. That's not happening.
Your story is just so beautiful. Gary, how can people get your book, Bliss, and how can they reach out to you and find out more about you?
Okay, well, Google is always the greatest thing. My book is on Amazon, and I self-published because this topic is not popular with publishing companies. So, because I touch on a lot of different things in it. I do talk about insurance. I do talk about my disease. I do talk about the problems I met along the way and then how I dealt with those problems. Because there were problems. There were, things that became pretty sketchy there for a while. And also how my feeling of bliss, would rise and then all of a sudden something would happen and it would crash. And how I kind of maintained it and how I used my mind and my body to kind of stay in that really great space.
In the zone. Yeah, I like
in
that.
the zone,
I love that. I love
in
that.
that healing zone. And that's really why I wrote the book, because I met Anita. She heard my story. I did an interview with Anita, and that went huge.
Yeah.
And I started getting so many people contacting me that I couldn't really, I couldn't devote to each person what I'm devoting, here on this interview. So what I did then is I wrote the book instead. and that was my gift. And then that's what I spread out to people so that they can, and it's helped a lot of people on their journeys to not feel like that this is the worst thing that could have happened to them, because it's not. B, that they're going to die, because maybe they won't, but maybe they will. And C, no matter what happens, if you really are in the right mindset, nothing can harm you. Nothing can harm you unless you allow it. Your suffering is happening because of what's going on in the relationship between your mind and body. That's your suffering. That's your suffering.
Oh my God. You hit it on the head, man. I think it was, who did I have on that interview? Gay Hendricks. He said the longest journey of your life is going to be the 12 inches between your head and your heart.
There you go. That's a beautiful way to put it. That's a beautiful way to put it.
Gary, this has been amazing, man. Like I
Oh,
truly
Trey,
love your
it.
story, man. Like I love everything that you got going on. Guys, make sure you go out and get that book, Bliss. I mean, I can only expect you to self-publish since you have your own insurance. I mean, that's you are your own insurer, so it's like I don't expect anything less than you self-publishing your book.
And plus, I'm a cancer survivor with no chemo, no radiation, none of
You
that.
gotta write a book, man. You gotta put it out there.
Yeah, there's no other way to do it, and it's not going to be like on the New York bestseller list.
Yes, but you're like you're on like the world's best-selling list, because it's like you're telling a story that it needs to get out there. Like more people, that New York best-selling list is, it's all political anyway. It's like
political, exactly.
This is worldly. This is spiritual, man. You're on my list, bro.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And I'm on Facebook, Gary Ramsey, same thing. And Instagram, Ramsey Bliss. So it's out there, and pretty much if people Google, they'll see, where I am, interviews, all of that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Gary, thank you so much for joining the show, man. This has been amazing.
Excellent. And thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.